The night had started off with laughter, the kind that echoed off the walls of our cozy living room and filled the space with warmth. It was the first time in what felt like ages that my younger brother, Jamie, and I had the house to ourselves. Our parents were away on one of their frequent business trips, leaving us in charge. It was an adventure, or so we thought, a break from the usual stringent rules and early bedtimes. I glanced over at Jamie, his blonde hair a tousled mess from our impromptu pillow fight. His blue eyes sparkled with the kind of innocent excitement that only a 12-year-old could possess. I, on the other hand, felt a bit more composed, or at least I pretended to be. At 16, I took my role as the responsible older sister seriously, even if it was just overseeing a night of movies and popcorn. The first anomaly of the evening came in the form of a phone call. The landline's shrill rings sliced through the comfortable silence, and I could see Jamie's eyebrows knit together in confusion. "Who could be calling us now?" he whispered, as if afraid to break the sanctity of our tiny, happy bubble. Shrugging, I reached for the receiver. "Hello?" The line crackled, and then a whisper. It was so soft, so faint, I thought I might have imagined it. But then it came again, a hushed, "I see you." I froze, my heart pounding. It was probably just a prank call. Some kid from school with nothing better to do on a Friday night. I forced a laugh, hoping it sounded more convincing than it felt, and hung up. "Wrong number," I lied smoothly, turning to Jamie with a smile that felt painted on. But Jamie didn't buy it. He knew me too well. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't press. Instead, he swallowed visibly and nodded, trying to shift his focus back to our movie marathon. The night grew darker, the storm outside picking up, adding an eerie soundtrack to our evening. That's when the second anomaly struck, a power outage. The house plunged into darkness, save for the faint flicker of lightning outside. I could hear Jamie's breath hitch next to me. Acting on instinct, I grabbed the flashlight we kept under the coffee table and flicked it on, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. "It's okay, Jamie. Let's just check the house, make sure everything is locked up tight." He nodded, clutching another flashlight I handed him. We split up, agreeing to meet back in the living room. My heart thrummed in my chest as I made my way through the darkened house, each room feeling unfamiliar and menacing in the absence of light. That's when it happened, the whisper in the kitchen. My hands stilled on the pantry door, the hairs on the back of my neck rising. It was unmistakable this time, a deliberate, "I can see you." Panic coursed through me. It wasn't coming from the phone this time. It was here, inside the house. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the room like a searchlight, but it revealed nothing. No sign of anyone. I had to be brave, not just for my sake, but for Jamie's. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my shaking hands and ventured back to the living room, determined to find the source of those whispers. Jamie was already there, his face pale, his eyes wide. He had heard it too. Our night of independence had turned into a nightmare. We had to stay strong for each other. The storm outside raged on, oblivious to the storm brewing inside, as we faced the unknown terror together. With the whisper still echoing in my ears, I met Jamie back in the living room. The look on his face told me all I needed to know. He had heard it too. There were no words exchanged between us, merely an understanding that we needed to act, and quickly. "We need to make sure everything is locked," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Windows, doors, everything." Jamie nodded, his usual playful spark replaced by a seriousness I'd seldom seen in him. Together, we moved through the house with methodical precision. Each window we checked became a silent testament to our growing fear. Each confirmed as locked a minor victory in our minds. It was during this tense ritual that we saw it, a shadow flickering across the backyard, visible for only a moment through the kitchen window, but unmistakable in its presence. The sight of it was enough to freeze us in our tracks. The shadow, so human in shape yet so impossibly there, vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving us to question if our minds were playing tricks. Yet the fear that clutched at my heart was real as the storm that raged outside, uncaring and relentless. We need to barricade ourselves," Jamie whispered, his voice barely carrying over the howl of the wind. "Just until morning, until Mom and Dad come back." He was right. Our house, once a haven of childhood dreams and safety, now felt like a fragile shell, easily shattered. We began dragging chairs, a bookshelf, anything we could move against the doors. It was a feeble defense, perhaps, but it gave us something to do, a way to focus our racing thoughts. Once done, we retreated to my room, the one with the strongest lock and a phone. We pushed my dresser against the door, not speaking, each lost in our own whirlwind of fears and what-ifs. It was then, in the deceptive silence between thunderclaps, that we finally allowed ourselves to break down. "I'm scared," Jamie admitted, sitting on the edge of my bed, his flashlight creating dancing shadows across the walls. "I am too," I confessed, sitting beside him. In that moment, our facades crumbled. We were just two kids, alone and afraid, grasping for a semblance of normal in a situation that was anything but. We talked then, not about what was happening, but about memories of better times, of silly arguments and shared secrets. It was a bridge over the chasm of our fear, a reminder that no matter what, we had each other. As the night wore on, our conversation dwindled, replaced by a silence filled with unsaid prayers for safety and the swift arrival of morning. The night stretched on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Jamie and I remained huddled in my room, the storm's fury a constant reminder of our isolation. Yet amid the chaos of nature's wrath, a plan began to form, born out of desperation and the fierce desire to reclaim our sense of safety. "We need to know who's doing this," I said, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. "We need evidence." Jamie looked at me, his blue eyes reflecting a resolve that matched my own. "The phone calls," he suggested. Can we trace them or record them?" I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. My laptop, equipped with some basic software I'd tinkered with for a school project, might just offer us a way to capture evidence of the harassment we were facing. We set up my phone next to the computer, connecting it to the audio input, and waited. The wait wasn't long. As if on cue, the phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the tense silence of the room. I answered on speaker, hitting the record button on my laptop. The familiar whisper came, "You can't hide." But this time, we were ready. The call, recorded in its eerie entirety, was more than just a voice. It was a lead. Utilizing an online guide, I managed to trace the call back to a local number, our new neighbor. With the storm calming and dawn breaking, Jamie and I made the decision to venture outside. Our courage, mustered from hours of fear and solidarity, propelled us forward towards the neighbor's house. Confrontation was inevitable. Armed with our evidence, we approached with the local police who had been receptive to our situation upon seeing the recording. They found a setup of surveillance equipment and voice modulators in his living room, tools of his torment. The neighbor, caught in the act, could only stammer excuses, a misguided vendetta against our parents over a petty dispute. It was both a relief and a revelation to understand the reason behind our terror, no matter how unfounded that reason was. Reflecting on the ordeal, standing outside as the first rays of sunrise pierced the lingering clouds, Jamie and I felt an indescribable bond. We had faced our fears together, fought back against the darkness, and emerged stronger. The experience, harrowing as it was, had taught us about the strength we possess, not just as siblings, but as individuals. Our parents returned to find us changed, no longer just children, but survivors of our own harrowing tale. The Night of Whispers became a story of resilience, a testament to our ability to face the unknown together.
The car shuddered to a stop in front of the ramshackle house that stood, somewhat defiantly, against the backdrop of an overcast sky. The engine's final cough echoed off the facade of the once grand home, as if to announce the arrival of its sole inheritor. Alex stepped out, their boots crunching on gravel, a mix of anticipation and dread tightening in their chest. The house, with its peeling paint and boarded windows, was a far cry from the home they remembered, its aura not of nostalgia, but of secrets begging to be uncovered. Dragging the last of their belongings to the front door, Alex couldn't help but feel the eyes of the house upon them, a sensation that lingered as they traversed the threshold into the musty interior. Memories, like specters, danced in the dust motes that swirled through sunbeams spilling into the dimness. Alex had come with a purpose: clean the house, sell it, move on. Yet somewhere within, they harbored the hope of reconciliation with the past, with the estranged grandfather whose sudden passing had left more questions than answers. The first few days passed in a blur of cleaning and sorting, the mundane tasks momentarily dulling the edge of Alex's curiosity. But on the fourth day, burrowed in the belly of the house, they discovered something that would change the trajectory of their stay. Amidst the clutter in the basement, behind stacks of forgotten furniture and boxes of yellowed books, a peculiar outline against the wall caught Alex's eye. It was a door, or had been, now concealed and sealed with a heavy layer of dust and decay. The discovery sent a shiver up Alex's spine, an instinctual response that mingled fear with fascination. With determination set like steel, Alex grabbed a crowbar from their toolkit, prying at the edges of the sealed doorway until, with a groan, it gave way. The hidden room beyond was a pocket of time, untouched and perfectly preserved in its solitude. The air was thick, laden with the scent of old paper and unseen decay. A small, grimy bed, an ancient, moth-eaten armchair, and shelves of decaying books filled the space. But it was the diary, lying open atop a dusty desk, that drew Alex like a magnet. The writings within were frantic, scribbled by a hand driven by fear and desperation. They spoke of being trapped, of a guardian, and whispers in the dark, ramblings that chilled Alex to the bone. Despite the mounting dread, Alex found themselves returning to the diary, night after night, consuming its contents with a growing obsession. It was during one of these late-night readings that Jamie arrived, unexpected but not unwelcome. Her concern was palpable, her brow furrowed as she took in the state of Alex, the diary spreading its dark influence across the room. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Jamie said, half joking, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her nerves. Alex, torn between irritation and relief at her presence, managed a strained smile. "Just uncovering family secrets. Did you know about this room?" Jamie shook her head, eyes wide as they glanced around the hidden space. "No. God, it's like something out of a horror story. What did you find?" With a sigh, Alex handed over the diary, watching as Jamie's eyes skimmed the pages. The air between them grew heavy, a silent agreement forming that the past was not as buried as they had thought. Their conversation that night spiraled into an argument, the first of many. Jamie pleaded with Alex to leave the diary alone, to focus on the future instead of digging up the past. But Alex, ensnared by the mystery, couldn't and wouldn't let it go. The rift between them widened, a chasm filled with whispered fears and unspoken truths, even as they both sensed that the story unfolding was far bigger and darker than either could have imagined. As days bled into nights, the oppressive atmosphere of the house seemed to thicken, each corner shadowed with whispers that weren't there before. Alex's obsession with the diary and its author, whom they'd begun to refer to as the Guardian in their notes, had painted their waking hours with a taint of mania. Sleep became a forgotten necessity, replaced by the relentless pursuit of truth. And truth was exactly what Alex found, though it was as mired in darkness as the room that kept it. Through a combination of local archives and online forums dedicated to the obscure and forgotten facets of their hometown's history, Alex and Jamie pieced together a chilling narrative. Their grandfather, once esteemed in the community, harbored a dual life, marred by unethical experiments and psychological manipulation. The hidden room, indeed, the Guardian's prison, was a remnant of this dark period. This revelation shattered any remnants of fond memories Alex held for their grandfather, replacing them with revulsion and disbelief. Jamie, while initially hesitant, became an indispensable ally in Alex's search. Her practicality balanced Alex's intensity, grounding them when their research threatened to spiral out of control. Night after night, they pored over old documents and letters, each piece fitting into the grim mosaic of their family's past. Their investigation reached a climax one stormy evening, when as lightning dissected the sky, a breakthrough emerged. Buried beneath layers of obfuscation in the archives was a journal, parallel in time to the diary, written by their grandfather. This journal contained not just confessions, but also instructions on how to rid the house and themselves of the lingering malice the Guardian had been subjected to. Armed with this knowledge, Alex faced the hidden room once more, its atmosphere now a palpable force of malice and despair. The air seemed to pulsate with a silent plea for recognition, for acknowledgement of the suffering endured within its walls. With Jamie standing guard at the door, A symbol of unwavering support, Alex vocalized an acknowledgement of the Guardians' pain and their grandfather's crimes, offering an apology that, while late, carried the weight of genuine sorrow. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A sudden drop in temperature gave way to a warmth that spread through the room, as if the house itself sighed in relief. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace that had long eluded the space. In the aftermath, as the first light of dawn filtered through grimy windows, Alex and Jamie made a decision. The house, a silent witness to years of unspoken horror, would not be sold. Instead, Alex vowed to transform it into a memorial, a place where the forgotten could be remembered, and warnings from the past could echo into the future to those willing to listen. This decision marked not just the end of their harrowing journey, but also the beginning of healing, both for the siblings and the spirits entangled in the house's history. Standing together in the now quiet living room, Alex and Jamie knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Yet in that moment, they also knew they were ready to face them, together, free from the shadows of their past. I'm sorry for any confusion, but there only seems to be a misunderstanding in your request, as you've mentioned action beats 7-9, which do not exist in the given structure of the story. And also, there isn't a specified ending beyond what was covered in the directives you provided. Let me know how you'd like to proceed, or if there's another way I can assist you. The days passed in a seamless blend of monotony and meticulous routine within the cold, impersonal walls of my high-rise apartment. Solitude had always been a cloak I draped over my shoulders with pride, convincing myself that the distance from the chaos of the world below was my sanctum. My work as a programmer afforded me the luxury of isolation, my interactions nothing more than the clacking of keys and the glow of the screen that illuminated my space long into the night. It was during one of these endless nights, as the clock ticked away towards the early hours, that I first noticed it, a shadow, barely discernible, flitting at the edge of my vision. I turned sharply, convinced that the strain of long hours had finally taken its toll, but there was nothing, noting but the usual clutter and loneliness that filled my apartment. With a shrug, I buried the incident under layers of logic and rationale, dismissing it as a trick of the tired mind. Days rolled into weeks, and the shadow grew bolder, a persistent flicker that no longer fled when I sought it out. Whispers accompanied it, whispers that curled like smoke around my thoughts, sowing seeds of doubt and unrest. They spoke of secrets, of truths hidden deep within the crevices of my consciousness, truths I wasn't ready to face. My once comforting solitude turned suffocating, the invisible presence, an unwelcome invader in my sanctuary. Anna, my sister, was the first to voice her concerns, her voice a lifeline offered in the midst of my descent. We met at a quaint cafe, a stark contrast to the shadows that had begun to haunt me. She eyed me with worry etched deep in her hazel eyes, so like my own, as she reached across the table, her palm open and inviting. "You've been distant more than usual," she said, her voice tinged with a concern that made my chest tighten. "Is everything okay?" Her question, simple and filled with genuine worry, should have been my cue to confess, to share the growing turmoil within me. Instead, I fortified my walls, the shadows whispering warnings of betrayal and deceit. "I'm fine, Anna," I lied, my voice steady despite the chaos brewing beneath the surface. "Just caught up with work, that's all." Her brows furrowed, and she withdrew her hand, a silent acceptance of my refusal to open up. Our conversation meandered on safer grounds after that, but the space between us had grown, a chasm widened by my lies and her unanswered questions. Returning to my apartment felt like stepping back into a prison of my own making, the whispers louder, more insistent. That night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while the city slept below, the whispers crescendoed into a frenzy, unrelenting, clawing at the edges of my sanity. Guilt, they hissed, pain, they moaned. An unbearable pressure built within my skull, images flashing behind my eyes, images of a night long buried, of screeching tires and a twisted, lifeless body. In that moment of despair, the walls I had so carefully built to keep the world at bay crumbled, revealing the raw wounds beneath. The shadow, once just a flicker, now loomed large, a dark specter born of repressed memories and guilt. I realized then what it sought, not to torment, but to bring forth the truth I had buried. A truth about a night I had tried so hard to forget, about the best friend I couldn't save. My breaking point came with the dawn, a clarity piercing through the remnants of my shattered enclosure. The whispers, the shadows, they were not the enemy. They were the manifestation of my guilt, a guilt I could no longer deny. In the stark light of the morning, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would reach out to Mr. Larson to confess my role in the tragedy that had taken his son and my best friend. My hands trembled as I dialed the number, each ring echoing like a tolling bell marking the end of my years-long exile from the truth. When Mr. Larson's voice finally broke through the line, it carried the weight of years thick with unshed grief and dwindling hope. "Hello, Mr. Larson, it's me," I stammered, the identity I hid behind for so long feeling foreign on my tongue. "I need to talk to you about that night. There's something I should have told you a long time ago." The air between us hummed with a silence that carried the gravitas of the unspoken, the unresolved. His consent to meet was delivered in a voice worn by time yet laced with a cautious curiosity that reminded me of the man I once knew. A teacher who believed in the good within his students, despite the darkness that sometimes clouded their paths. The days leading up to our meeting were a mosaic of sleepless nights and haunted days. The shadows that had once tormented me now stood silent, their presence a constant reminder of the impending confrontation with my past. Mr. Larson's home was a dwelling time seemed to forget, nestled at the end of a leaf-strewn driveway. Stepping into the living room, I was engulfed by memories, pictures of a youthful smile forever frozen in time adorning the walls. He sat opposite me, his eyes a reflection of the sorrow and understanding that had become his constant companions. The confession spilled from me like a flood breaking through a dam, words laced with guilt and sorrow for the friend I had lost and the pain I had caused. I told him everything, the accident, my fear, the years of silence, and waited for the judgment I felt I deserved. To my surprise, it was not condemnation that I found in his eyes, but a sorrow that matched my own. Mr. Larson listened, his expression softened by a forgiveness I struggled to comprehend. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, a balm to the turmoil that had raged within me for so long. "We all carry burdens, son," he said, the kindness in his voice unwinding the tight coil of shame in my heart. "The weight of what happened will always be with us, but it's what we do with that weight that defines us. You've carried this alone for far too long." His forgiveness was a gift I had never expected to receive, one that granted me permission to forgive myself. The shadows that had shrouded my life in darkness began to recede, their whispers fading into silence as the heavy chains of guilt that bound me loosened. That night, as I returned to my apartment, I stood before the window, gazing out at the world that I had shut out for so long. For the first time in years, I felt a stirring of hope, a lightness in my being. Facing the shadows head-on had unveiled the truth I needed to see, not to be tormented, but to be freed. The darkness that had once defined my existence no longer held sway over me. In its place, the dawn of a new beginning beckoned, promising a future where the past no longer held me captive, but rather guided me towards redemption and healing. As dawn broke the next morning, something within me had shifted. The apartment that had been my cage now felt too vast, too empty. It was as if the walls that had once constricted me were now urging me forward, pushing me towards a world I had long evaded. The shadows had dissipated, their mission completed, leaving behind a clarity that pierced through the remnants of my self-imposed exile. With a resolve that felt foreign yet empowering, I stepped outside, the sun's rays banishing the last of the chill that had seethed in my bones. The city, with its cacophony of life and perpetual motion, no longer seemed daunting. Instead, it welcomed me back, a prodigal son returning from a journey through the darkest realms of guilt and redemption. Anna was waiting for me near the entrance of my building, a sentinel of hope, her presence a beacon guiding me back. Seeing her there, I realized she had always been my lifeline, a constant through my self-inflicted storm. As I approached, her gaze met mine, searching, probing for the brother she once knew. I saw the moment understanding dawned on her, saw the relief flood her features as she took in my changed demeanor. There were no words needed. Our embrace said everything. It was an acknowledgement of the past and a pledge for the future, a promise to rebuild the bridges I had burned in my isolation. In the days that followed, Anna and I took tentative steps towards rekindling our bond. Each conversation a layer peeled back, revealing the raw truth beneath. It was in one of these moments of vulnerability that I shared the story of the shadows, of my night of reckoning with Mr. Larson, and the cathartic release of my guilt. The journey from darkness back into the light was not instantaneous, but a path paved with small victories and inevitable setbacks. With each step, though, the weight of my guilt grew lighter, allowing me to finally gaze upon the world and the people in it without the veil of shame that had clouded my view. The story of my confrontation with the shadows, the manifestations of my deepest fears and regrets, became a testament to the power of facing one's demons. Through my ordeal, I learned that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, was the key to unlocking the chains of the past. And so, my life gradually shifted from a solitary existence shadowed by guilt to one illuminated by the possibility of redemption and human connection. The shadows, once harbingers of my downfall, had become my unlikely saviors, guiding me through the darkness to find the light I thought was forever lost. In the end, it was not about forgetting the past, but learning to live with it, allowing it to shape me, but not define me. As I stood beside Anna, looking out into the horizon, I realized that the journey was far from over. Yet for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid. I was ready to step into the light, scars and all, embracing whatever lay ahead with an open heart and a renewed spirit. For in the deepest shadows, I had discovered not just the darkest parts of myself, but the strength and courage to overcome them. And that was the most significant revelation of all.